Ever get that feeling like you're just totally sure about something?
Uh-huh.
Like 100% certain?
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to deep dive into that very feeling.
Okay.
We're going to be exploring Robert Burton's On Being Certain,
All right.
and get ready, because what we uncover might make you question like everything you thought you knew about knowing.
It's true. We often think of knowledge and the feeling of knowing as the same thing,
Right.
but they're really quite distinct.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Hmm.
Give me an example.
Well, think about solving a tough riddle or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, that aha
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
that sudden rush of certainty.
Right.
That's the feeling of knowing.
Okay.
It's not the solution itself, but the
Right.
judgment that you've got it right.
So it's like the brain giving itself a high five.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
nailed it.
Yeah, but here's the catch.
Yeah.
That feeling,
Yeah.
it can be misleading. It's
Right.
not always an accurate reflection of whether you're actually right.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you're saying I could feel certain about something that's totally wrong?
It happens more often than you think.
Really?
Yeah, let's take memory, for example.
Okay.
Think back to where you were on 9/11.
Yeah.
You probably have a pretty vivid memory,
Oh, yeah?
right?
Definitely. I can picture it.
Now, research shows that those kinds of memories, like even though they feel incredibly real,
Uh-huh.
can be incredibly inaccurate.
Yeah.
The Challenger study, for instance,
Yeah.
found that people confidently recalled details about the shuttle disaster that turned out to be completely wrong.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So you're telling me I might be remembering things that never even happened?
It's a classic example of how the feeling of knowing can lead us astray.
Right.
Our brains crave certainty,
Okay.
and sometimes they fill in the blanks with things that feel right,
Hmm.
even if they're not.
That's a little unsettling, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, if memory's that unreliable,
Right.
what about other things we feel certain about?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
It gets even more intriguing when we consider things like blind sight.
Blindsight.
Yeah, what's that? It's a phenomenon where people with damage to their visual cortex can react to things they swear they can't see.
Huh.
So they might, like, duck if you throw a ball at them,
Right.
even though they say they can't see it coming.
That's wild.
Yeah.
How does that tie into this feeling of knowing thing?
Well, it shows that certainty can arise from a system that's fundamentally flawed. If our visual system,
Right.
which feels so reliable, can be that messed up.
Yeah.
What about our other cognitive processes?
So blindsight suggests that there's a disconnect between
Yeah.
what we perceive and what's actually happening.
Exactly. And that disconnect is where things can get really interesting,
Okay.
especially when it comes to our beliefs.
So we've got unreliable memories,
Uh-huh.
blindsight.
Yeah.
This is starting to sound like my brain is playing tricks on me.
Well, let's add another layer to this.
Okay.
Have you ever noticed how people kind of double down on their beliefs, even when presented with evidence that contradicts them?
Oh, all the time, especially online.
Yeah.
It's like facts don't even matter anymore.
That's cognitive dissonance in action. Leon Festinger's theory suggests that we experience real mental discomfort
Okay.
when we hold like conflicting beliefs.
Yeah.
So instead of changing our minds, we often cling even tighter to our existing views,
Right.
even if they're wrong,
Wow.
just to avoid that discomfort.
So it's not about being right.
Yeah.
It's about feeling right.
You got it. And that feeling of being right,
Yeah.
that sense of certainty,
Mm.
it can be so powerful that it overrides our logic and reason.
And all of this is happening because of some instinct deep in our brains, right?
Well, that's where things get even more fascinating.
Okay.
Research on the limbic system,
Uh-huh.
the part of the brain responsible for emotions,
Right.
has shown that stimulating certain areas can trigger intense feelings of certainty.
Hang on. Are you saying our deepest convictions could just be like electrical impulses in our brains?
It's a provocative thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you question the very nature of belief
Right.
and where our convictions truly come from.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
So how does our brain even process all this information and form these convictions in the first place?
Think of it like an artificial neural network.
Okay.
There's a hidden layer
Uh-huh.
where all our experiences and biases and predispositions sort of filter the information we take in.
Mm-hmm.
This hidden layer shapes our perceptions and ultimately what we believe,
Okay.
even if we're not aware of it.
So it's like our brain has a filter that colors how we see the world.
Exactly. And that filter is constantly being shaped by our experiences.
Okay.
Which explains why two people can look at the same thing
Right.
and come away with completely different interpretations.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this all ties together.
Yeah?
But what about the good feeling that comes with certainty?
Hmm.
That sense of satisfaction when you solve a problem or win an argument.
Well, that's our brain's reward system at work. When we feel certain, we get a hit of dopamine,
Right.
the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure.
So it's like we're getting a little reward for feeling certain.
Exactly. And that reward reinforces the feeling, making us crave that certainty even more.
Hmm.
It becomes a feedback loop that can sometimes make us addicted to being right.
Well, hold on. Are you saying that our brains are hardwired to seek out certainty even if it's wrong?
It certainly seems that way.
Wow.
And that raises some important questions about how we approach knowledge,
Right.
decision making,
Yeah.
and even our own beliefs.
Well, I'm definitely feeling less certain about certainty now.
Mm.
This is heavy stuff,
Yeah, it is.
but I'm eager to hear more about how this all plays out.
Let's keep digging in the next part. We'll explore the challenges of objectivity,
Okay.
the seductive nature of intuition,
Right.
and the ethical implications of acting on certainty.
Oh, that's good.
All right, picking up where we left off. I think it's time we tackle this whole idea of objectivity.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's like we assume we're seeing the world clearly, but what if we're not?
Remember Mr. Z, the patient with chronic back pain?
Uh-huh.
No medical explanation, but he was absolutely convinced something was seriously wrong.
Right. He felt certain, even though doctors couldn't find anything.
That's the feeling of knowing in action again,
Hmm.
driving his perception even without concrete proof.
Yeah.
It highlights how our individual experiences and that internal sense of certainty can really skew our view of what's objective.
It's kind of like those optical illusions where you see two different images.
Yeah.
It's a trick.
Yeah.
But your brain still insists on seeing one as more real.
Perfect analogy.
Right.
Our perceptions aren't just passive recordings of the world, they're actively constructed, colored by our experiences, our expectations, and of course that feeling of knowing.
So if we can't fully trust our own perceptions,
Right.
how can we ever be truly objective?
That's the paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're bombarded with information, opinions flying everywhere,
Uh-huh.
but we're wired to seek certainty, often latching onto the first explanation that feels right.
And that's where intuition comes in, right?
Exactly.
That gut feeling that
Yeah.
tells us what's what.
But intuition, despite its reputation as some mystical sixth sense,
Right.
is really just a product of our unconscious thought processes.
Okay.
And guess what's fueling those processes?
The feeling of knowing.
You got it.
So those gut feelings aren't necessarily divine insights.
Right.
They're just our brains making lightning-fast calculations we're not even aware of.
Precisely. And while intuition can sometimes lead to brilliant breakthroughs,
Yeah.
it can also lead us down the wrong path.
Right.
It's essential to understand its limits and not rely on it blindly.
So it's like a baseball batter swinging on instinct.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a home run.
Right.
Sometimes it's a swing and a miss.
Exactly. That split-second decision is driven by unconscious processes.
Yeah.
And the feeling of knowing the key is to balance intuition with critical thinking and a good dose of skepticism.
Which brings us to a pretty important question.
Uh-huh.
What are the ethics of acting on certainty,
Yeah,
especially when it might be misplaced? The stakes can be pretty high.
absolutely. Imagine a judge presiding over a trial. They have to weigh evidence, make a decision that impacts lives.
Yeah.
But even the most experienced judge is susceptible to the feeling of knowing which could sway their judgment.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
We expect judges to be impartial,
Right.
but they're human prone to the same biases as anyone else.
It underscores the need for checks and balances in the legal system and for judges to constantly be aware of their own potential biases.
This applies to all of us, really.
Uh-huh.
We make decisions every day based on what we feel certain about.
Yeah.
How do we guard against being misled by that feeling?
It's about cultivating a healthy skepticism towards our own certainty,
Okay.
being open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
So not abandoning our convictions entirely,
Right.
but holding them with an open mind.
Yeah.
Recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
Right. It's a shift in mindset, valuing the process of questioning and exploration over clinging to easy answers.
Speaking of clinging, earlier we talked about that dopamine rush we get when we feel certain.
Uh-huh.
It's like a reward for being right.
And that reward system, as we know, can lead to a kind of addiction to being right.
Right.
It feels good to win an argument, even a pointless one.
Makes sense. It's that dopamine hit making us feel good,
Yeah.
even if we were arguing about something totally trivial.
Exactly. And this drive for certainty powered by the pleasure of being right
Yeah.
makes it tough to admit when we're wrong.
Especially nowadays with social media algorithms feeding us information that confirms our biases.
Oh, yeah.
It's like living in an echo chamber.
You said it reinforces that feeling of knowing.
Yeah.
even when our beliefs are based on misinformation, navigating this world of information overload,
Right.
while staying critical of our own convictions is a challenge we all face.
So how do we break free from those echo chambers?
Consciously seeking out diverse perspectives,
Hmm.
engaging in respectful debate, being willing to change our minds when presented with solid evidence.
And maybe most importantly, cultivating a sense of humility,
Yeah.
recognizing that we don't know everything.
Couldn't agree more. Now let's shift gears a bit.
Uh,
We've been talking about the feeling of knowing,
Right.
but is there even such a thing as a purely rational mind,
Mm.
free from its influence?
That's a big question. A lot of popular psychology, like Goleman's emotional intelligence,
Uh-huh.
talks about this dual mind,
Right.
rational and emotional.
Right, the idea that we need to develop emotional intelligence to make good decisions.
But earlier we talked about Ledoux's research on fear,
Yeah,
how it shows emotions can trigger split-second decisions, bypassing conscious thought entirely.
exactly. It challenges this idea of a purely rational mind.
Mm.
If emotions are so intertwined with our thinking,
Right.
can we truly separate them?
So even our supposedly rational decisions
Ma.
might be swayed by unconscious emotion.
Right. Including that sneaky feeling of knowing.
It seems that way, which raises the question.
Yeah.
If our brains are wired to seek certainty even when it's wrong,
Right.
how can we make truly informed decisions?
It's a bit humbling, right?
Yeah.
We all want to think we're rational, but we're all susceptible to these cognitive biases, seeing the world through our own filters.
Remember the Challenger study?
Oh, yeah.
People vividly recalled details of an event that never actually happened.
Right. It shows how easily our memories can be distorted
Yeah.
and how readily we embrace certainty even when it's based on faulty information. So what's the solution? Are we doomed to be puppets of this feeling?
Not necessarily. We can't eliminate the feeling of knowing,
Right.
but we can become more aware of its influence
Okay.
and develop strategies to mitigate its negative effects.
Like, what? Give me some hope here.
Cultivating that healthy skepticism we talked about,
Mm.
actively seeking out diverse viewpoints,
You're right.
being willing to change our minds when presented with new information, and accepting that uncertainty is just part of the human experience.
Right.
We can't know everything for sure.
Embracing uncertainty can be liberating.
Yeah.
It opens us up to new possibilities, new ways of seeing things, and a deeper understanding of ourselves and others.
It's about finding that balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between the comfort of certainty
Right.
and the intellectual humility that allows us to grow and learn.
Exactly. And that reminds me of a quote by Bertrand Russell.
Okay.
The whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves and wiser people so full of doubts.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It highlights the danger of blind certainty
Right.
and the importance of intellectual humility. We need that humility to make good decisions in this complex world.
It's about shifting our focus from seeking easy answers
Right.
to embracing the process of inquiry, of constantly questioning and refining our understanding.
A lifelong love of learning, exploring new ideas,
Yeah.
and engaging in respectful dialogue with those who hold different views.
That open-minded approach is essential for fostering understanding, bridging divides, and creating a more just world.
Well said. This brings us to another question. How does the feeling of knowing shape our moral and ethical beliefs?
Yeah.
It feels like that sense of certainty plays a big role in what we consider right and wrong.
Absolutely. Our moral compass, our sense of right and wrong, is shaped by many factors, including our upbringing, culture experiences, and, yes, the feeling of knowing.
Burton suggests it can lead to both moral triumphs and ethical failures. It can inspire us to act with conviction, to stand up for what we believe in.
Think about those who fought for social justice throughout history.
Yeah.
Their unwavering belief in a better world, often driven by a profound sense of certainty,
Right.
led them to make incredible sacrifices.
But that same feeling can lead to intolerance, prejudice, even violence.
When we're convinced that our beliefs are the only right ones, we become blind to other perspectives justifying harmful actions.
History is full of examples. Wars over religious beliefs, persecution, suppression of dissent.
Yeah.
It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of clinging too tightly to certainty, especially in ethical matters.
We need to develop a more nuanced understanding of our brains, recognizing that right and wrong isn't always black and white.
Cultivating empathy is key, right?
Absolutely.
The ability to understand others' feelings even when their beliefs differ from our own.
And being willing to engage in difficult conversations.
Yeah.
To listen with an open mind and to challenge our own assumptions.
So it's that constant questioning, that grappling with uncertainty and complexity,
Yeah.
that helps us grow morally and build a more compassionate society.
It's about moving beyond simplistic notions of good and evil and recognizing the nuances and ethical dilemmas.
Bringing us back to that balancing act.
Yeah.
Comfort of certainty versus intellectual humility. It's a tightrope walk.
The feeling of knowing is a powerful force shaping our lives for better or worse.
Right.
We need to understand its influence, harness its potential for good, and guard against its potential for harm.
That's a perfect way to sum it up as we wrap up this part of our deep dive. I want to leave our listeners with a question. Knowing how our brains create certainty, can we learn to question our own convictions and embrace the possibility of being wrong? That could be the key to making better decisions and fostering understanding in this world of information overload.
It's a journey worth taking. Join us in part 3 as we delve into the implications of these insights for personal growth, societal progress, and the search for meaning in an uncertain world.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about this feeling of knowing.
Yeah.
It shapes our perceptions, our beliefs, even our sense of right and wrong.
It's not just an intellectual phenomenon.
You're right. It's tied to our emotions, our sense of self.
Right.
Even our desire to make sense of the world.
Yeah, so simply recognizing that certainty can be misleading.
Right.
That's not enough.
So what else do we need to do?
Well, we need to understand how our brains work, how emotions and biases influence us,
Right.
how to navigate a world where finding absolute truth can feel impossible.
It's like we're trying to put together a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
But without knowing what the final picture looks like.
Right.
We have all these pieces, but figuring out how they fit is a constant struggle.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
It highlights the challenge we face reconciling our need for certainty with the uncertainty that's just part of life.
Burton talks about developing a more flexible mindset for personal growth.
He's right. It's about acknowledging that our understanding is always evolving.
Okay.
There's always more to learn.
Yeah.
And being wrong isn't a failure, but a chance to grow.
So embracing shades of gray.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing everything in black and white.
Exactly. Moving beyond simplistic thinking.
Right.
And recognizing that most issues are complex with multiple solutions and trade-offs.
This reminds me of the debate about free will versus determinism.
Oh, yeah.
Do we really choose our actions? Or are they predetermined by our genes and experiences?
That's a question that has stumped philosophers and scientists for ages.
Yeah.
Burton suggests the feeling of knowing might play a role in how we perceive choice.
So even if our actions are predetermined, the feeling of knowing creates the experience of choosing.
That's the idea and that subjective experience. Right. That's what matters for our sense of self and how we interact with the world.
Like those people with blind sight.
Right.
They react to things they can't consciously see.
Another example of how our experience can be radically different from reality.
Yeah.
Raises big questions about consciousness.
Yeah.
And how much we truly know ourselves.
It's mind-blowing to think there might be so much happening beneath the surface of our awareness.
It's a reminder that we're complex beings, and understanding ourselves is a lifelong process.
Burton emphasizes the importance of skepticism.
Yeah.
Especially towards our own certainty.
We need to recognize that the feeling of knowing can be seductive, making us cling to beliefs. Even when evidence contradicts them.
It takes intellectual humility to admit we're wrong and change our minds when presented with new information.
And openness to different perspectives, even those that challenge our core beliefs.
That's tough, especially when it feels like we're rewarded for being right.
Yeah.
And punished for being wrong.
Think about those heated political arguments.
Oh, yeah?
Where people seem more focused on winning than having a real conversation.
It shows that the feeling of knowing isn't just personal.
Right.
It impacts our social interactions, politics, and how we understand the world.
Burton argues that overcoming the limitations of certainty is vital for society's progress.
Especially with challenges like climate change, political divisions, and rapid technological advancements.
We need better ways to communicate.
Right.
Collaborate and make decisions based on evidence, not just ideology.
So fostering a culture of curiosity.
Open-mindedness.
And respect for different viewpoints.
Moving beyond simplistic narratives.
Right.
Embracing the messy, complex reality we live in.
This all brings us back to the search for meaning and purpose. How do we find meaning in a world where certainty is so elusive?
Burton suggests the answer lies in embracing exploration and discovery,
Okay.
finding joy in the journey of constantly learning, refining our understanding.
So not abandoning our values,
Right.
but holding them with an open hand,
Yeah.
recognizing we always have more to learn.
That open-mindedness isn't just intellectually stimulating. It can be spiritually enriching.
How so?
Well, it allows us to connect with something larger than ourselves,
Okay.
to experience awe and wonder in the face of the unknown.
That's a beautiful thought. So knowing our brains are wired for certainty, can we learn to question our own convictions and be okay with being wrong?
That's the challenge we face.
Yeah.
But by recognizing the limitations of certainty,
Right?
cultivating humility, and embracing exploration, we can create a more fulfilling, meaningful, and compassionate world.
This has been a fascinating deep dive into the feeling of knowing. I hope it has inspired you to keep questioning, exploring, and seeking deeper understanding.
Keep diving deep and keep questioning everything.